very excited about this one.
Are you?
Yes.
So we're going to talk about digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation.
Yes.
There are lots of big words. So are you going to explain those, Elia, to us? Because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Slightly different for me, so let's see if I get it right.
You can do it in Spanish, Español. So, yeah.
Es en español.
Yeah.
No. So, yeah, digitization. That's let's say if we look at the in a scale, right, the stairs. This will be the first step. We have seen a lot of businesses and industries say that they are digital because they work on a screen. Well, they have digitized it. They haven't digitalized it because digitization is just the transferring documents and material information into a digital format.
So analog to digital format.
Exactly.
So paper-based PDF. Well, PDF could be digitization.
PDF is digitization. Yeah. It is. Now, that doesn't bring any advantage to the business more than saving paper, which is, all right. Yeah. But the digitalization is an upscale of that. It is not just having documents and information in digital format, but actually having it in a way that can be machine processed.
Okay.
It is about having it in the system. It is about start connecting the information, the pieces, and not just having it as a digital paper, but actually as a system.
So digitalization, what you're saying there is taking digital information and using machine learning to revert back some type of value or answer or direction of some nature. Is that correct?
So actually not machine learning, because machine learning is more advanced, and that's part of the digital transformation process. Okay. That's actually making an impact in the business and changing the processes. Digitalization will be more having the data and the information in a way that can be processed by a machine.
So then you need to standardize.
It can be analyzed. Exactly. And that's why I'm very excited about this one, because it's very linked to something that we will talk at a different time, which is the standardization. Machines are getting smarter because humans are training them. That's the machine learning term for it. But they are still not as creative as humans, maybe. So the machine cannot interpret, it cannot make an interpretation of what is stated on a digital document. You really need to tell it what is it reading. So to do that, you need to have it all very much standardized, so there is no confusion, and ideally there is no need for a human intervention to validate the information that is being analyzed and processed.
So the information can't be apples and oranges and bananas. It needs all to be apples to be understood, or at least you need to be able to identify that it's three separate pieces of information and code that into your algorithm. So if we go back then, so digitization is taking analog information and digitizing that. So pen and paper, traditional, we're talking a couple of decades now ago, I guess, and digitizing. So at this stage, it's safe to say that all companies and all individuals are doing some type or working in a digital way or digitization in some way or nature, I guess.
And in today's advanced era, that is already outdated. So having something in digital format is taken by I would say taken by cut. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's no worries. Yeah, so we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it.
It's
you have more work to do. Actually,
it's taken by granted.
Yeah, taken for granted. Yeah.
It's taken for having something in digital format today is taken for granted.
Yeah.
I think that it's already something of the past, and we should be at least today on a digitalization step where we are actually making use of the information we have.
This is interesting, right? So you would expect that we're fully digitized, but I was filling out information for the bank last week and I had to print. And that means print paper for you kids out there. You actually had to print out some paper and sign it. and hand it into the bank. Now, that to me, I thought was crazy in 2022 that we still have to do that. So in the construction industry, you can also understand that, yes, we have digitized a lot of what we do. Excel, PDF, Microsoft have been a huge supporter of that, of course.
It's digital, yes.
Yeah. But the digitalization aspect, we're really still struggling with. We still use PDF drawings to build projects. We still print out reports to read them, rather than using software to help us and hardware to help us on site. But I wanted to jump onto the third aspect just to get an understanding of what we're going to talk about, and we'll come back in more detail, which is digital transformation. So digital transformation is, maybe you can explain that one.
So digital transformation, it will be like next step. Once you have everything digital and standardized in a way that can be computer processed and analyzed in the system, then that's when you start making use of that potential, and you start implementing and transforming your business processes. You're starting to take advantage of that and making a real impact.
So analytics.
It's analytics, but also it's the process, making everything more smooth, straightforward, flows, automation, and having real implemented, not just the information isolated in silos there, but actually taking the insights, making decisions based on facts in an active way, and really taking advantage of that in your business.
So using the data within your daily processing, but using that data to make business decisions to increase value for your business. So digital transformation.
It's about data, but also information, also communication, right? Like everything happens in real time, and preferably also you have built sufficient historical data information
knowledge,
to get predictions and to be able to analyze future scenarios, predictions, and prognosis of what may be the different outcomes by taking different actions at different times.
That's an interesting. So I guess we will repeat this quite a lot. So we're again removing this idea of a linear process and trying to connect it into the circular being that we use information, historical information on our next projects because we have digitized it, we have digitalized it, and we're now using it to transform our businesses. So you can't do that on a linear process. You have to do that on a circular, repeat, or as the saying is, rinse and repeat process where we continually evolve the understanding of our business and the understanding of our deliveries by using the information historically to, again, as you mentioned, to decide what direction we take on. So that's very interesting.
That will undoubtedly give value to your process and to your project construction, if we look at it on our industry, by having that on a linear process. But when you really take advantage of it and you actually make it cost efficient, your investment, right? The investment return of your investment is when you actually learn. And have been able to quantify, measure, and actually start implementing all those learnings and all that analytics that are for humans. It doesn't happen. We don't have the time to do that, the capability, or even the professional knowledge to analyze a construction project from all these different aspects. So that's where we take advantage of that.
And the simplicity we mentioned before was measuring in 2D and having the overview, quantification, quantity outtake from 2D on major scale projects and having that overview. It's impossible. But now we can have that overview because we've digitized that workflow. We're now using the information in the 3D aspect to help us quickly understand change, impact, and so on. But let's come back then. So, like, what can companies do and what can individuals do to digitize, or how do they make that transition to a digitized workflow? Not digitalization now, but digitized workflow. Like, yes, we do it in Excel and we use Microsoft and PDF, but you said earlier on, perhaps that's also outdated now.
Digitalization, you mean?
Digitization. So
digitization will be having everything on a digital format.
Yeah.
And I think we are already on that step. Okay, you say you had to print it. I wouldn't emphasize that much on that. I think we all agree that's
that is
gone.
outdated.
That's gone.
Yeah.
That's gonna last very few years. Barely any people have any printers at home anymore. We print in PDF basically, and I think that's where we are.
And what about the supply chain then? If you looked at the construction industry at large, and you consider, the sub supply chain and the sub supply chain, what could they possibly do, to digitize? I guess one point could be there's a lot of different applications out there to help improve how you work on a daily basis, like accountancy apps to do your accounts, and time recording apps to time record, and apps for tracking change and snagging. That could be a form of digitizing a workflow for companies as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, but as soon as you start having an app or a tool, I would say that you have already digitalized that process, because apps force you to actually standardize your data tracking.
Yeah.
And once that comes, you are like a bit of one step forward.
Yeah.
Another way to improve that would be maybe having templates in-house. That's maybe one step prior to digitalize a process, which is start small, start having a common way to operate in-house, at least, as a beginning, and get familiar with what it is to always follow and fill the information on the same field, right? And on the same way, and with the same units, and,
We often hear in the industry that it's very difficult for SMEs, small, medium enterprises, to digitize and to transfer into this digital process because it's so expensive. Now, we're a small to medium enterprise in KOSMOS.
I think it's actually cheaper. It has reduced our administration load a lot. It has helped us to actually transform in a digital way our business by actually getting insights and much more information that we would have ever been able to gather if we were having it on paper. We don't have the time really, and we don't want to have the time to do that because it's very administrative. And going back to your measuring on paper,
on 2D,
all that work needs to be done one way or the other. The difference is that with one, you are already doing two tasks in one. One is producing the job. The second one, by doing it digital, is collecting it.
And so that's key, of course, for the future, because the future is the advancement of your business, the analytics of the information to understand what direction you should go in, to understand what's good and what's bad about the business, right? And it's not just about the business we're talking about now, of course, it's the entire construction industry that we also need to consider, because from everything we do in terms of our communication, we're digitized somehow, but we're not really using the information in the way we could within the industry to improve what we do. Now, yes, we have many stakeholders and projects. Project life cycles are very long. It takes a lot of investment. But from a digital perspective, if you have small incremental changes along the process, the project, the process, and the return will improve, I guess. I guess we have been doing it anyway. I'll give you an example. This is from a quantity surveying perspective, and for all the quantity surveyors listening out there. Generally, cost plans at the end of a stage 2 or a schematic design, they can take a number of weeks to quantify if you're still doing 2D measurements. Now, we can turn those around on 3D if we have the 3D information within a week. Now, that's a huge transition for quantity surveying. And the only way that can be done is digital workflows and using digital tools to assess the information, high volumes of information quickly.
Yeah. So do you think then maybe there is an interest on not taking that step just yet?
Oh, there's
because
a
of
huge
how it's
interest.
perceived as
Yeah.
a loss of business. So
Absolutely.
I spend now 400 hours doing something that I could do in 20 hours. How do I explain my client that I will reduce the bill by 20 times?
Yeah.
While I'm also spending money on training and hiring and investing on tools and digital tools, for doing the job.
Yeah. So my opinion is it's a transfer of value and a transfer of quality, rather than saying to your client, we're going to hand back 380 hours to you. What you end up doing is you end up spreading the hours across the process, because you need to qualify the information that you use as a quantity surveyor or cost manager. You cannot just take the information without ever seeing it to process that. And I think that is something that's greatly misunderstood in the industry today. We talked about it in a previous podcast a while back, considering how other people use your information at the moment in our silos, and how we structure our information. Perhaps that's not exactly considered. So in order for us as a QS to get value from digitized information, we have to be involved in the production of that information. Otherwise, can we even use it?
Do you think then being involved at different stages of the project rather than your normal stage of involvement will actually take the job from someone else? You will be stepping on the toes of someone else by being involved, at different
I think digitization
stages.
and digitalization is requiring us to be more integrated in the process of designing and construction. Stakeholder groups now need to come together to work together, rather than we come back to the silos, rather than being silos, or rather than just coming in at certain moments within the project and offering their input. Now we have to fully communicate with each other. We have to be able to look at each other's information. Transparency, we'll come back to that also. Transparency is a very important one. But for us and other stakeholders to get value from the digital information, we have to be able to work together to produce that information. I have to share with you, and you have to share with me. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It actually is impossible.
Yeah. So it's not about learning how to be more digital. It's about learning how to work together as well, right?
Actually, so we're relearning how to work together.
It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of rethinking what we do.
We're relearning how to work together, actually. Maybe over the last number of decades, our industry has somewhat lost its way in terms of collaborative teams and collaborative environments. I honestly think that's driven by the contracts that we have. That's another topic that we'll come back to, because it's a very serious one. But we're currently working in this adversarial, conflicting industry, whereas it needs to be more cooperative and collaborative, right? So if you do digitize and you want to transfer into digitalization, and more importantly into the where the most value is created, is that using the digital information for business improvements, we have to be able to communicate together as a team, I guess.
You were mentioning that the shift of entire profession, all right, quantity surveying as an example, that's an entire profession shift. You are not longer doing this very manual, but actually changing the process, being involved more with the teams and using those hours not for something that is dead, but actually for something that brings value to the project. What about those individuals that it's like, let's not think of it as a profession, but actually as an individual person having a task, a role in a project that right now is very administrative, and then it will actually become digital. There might be also a fear
Of obsolescence.
obsolescence, and a fear or reluctance to actually get these processes implemented, because that will mean the death of their profession.
Yeah, the challenge with that is that it's inevitable. Whether you want it or not as an individual is not going to prevent it coming or not coming, because we talked about this previously in many of the conferences and stuff that we do. If we don't take responsibility for the advancement of our profession, then someone else will. You will have programmers that will write code that will make us obsolete. So we need to get in front of that transformation. We need to rewrite the history of our profession in order to be relevant in the future. Otherwise, we will not be relevant.
So then I guess that in that case, if it's something that is going to happen, we have seen it. There's been a huge disruption in many other industries from one day to another.
Robotics, go back to the car industry and how we build cars now. It's not manual anymore.
Yeah, so if it's drastic from one day to another, it may be actually more difficult to adjust to it. Whereas if we actually see that coming and we actually start accepting it and rather than rejecting it, start actually embracing it, it may actually be a smoother transition and less risky as you as a professional in the end, that's what you know how to do. I suppose that if you try to learn it slowly, it will be less impactful for your life than actually seeing that from one day to another you need to learn a totally new profession, new process, and new way of doing things.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have in the industry at the moment is the realization that change is actually coming and that we cannot prevent it now. It's just what is happening. I'm trying to think of an industry, if we reflect back, printing photographs, for example. Overnight, the digital camera came and the printing of photographs stopped. When was the last time you printed a photograph?
Yeah, well, it says like vintage, right? I still like to have pictures in my house, but for sure the business of
in terms of volume, though.
No, it has even changed because the very few pictures I suppose that are printed today, they are just don't. You buy them online. You no longer go to your neighborhood shop.
No. Yeah. And the same thing will happen in the construction industry. Within our processes and our professions, it's all changing. We could even reflect on drafters, the old school architect who drafted everything on paper with the huge drafting rooms and big tables for making the drawings.
I've done exams like that. I didn't have a laptop in my university.
And we did it as well, But do we do that anymore? Absolutely not,
No.
And our drafting rooms are gone and our drafters are not drafters anymore, they're modelers. And that has come in the last 15 years, I guess, right? Or I guess you could talk about, the introduction of AutoCAD or...
Modelers are no longer modelers either. Now they are actually programmers. You can see like a parametric design is essentially is programming. It's just giving commands and then automatically, implement design elements, which is of course making it more efficient, but it's requiring some skills that, today they are not taught, and it's self-learning.
It has to be
self-learning people, but those are the ones actually driving the change. And
self-learning is a big responsibility on individuals, I guess, to transition over to digital workflows. So if you are, using Excel to build your bill of quantities today, you need to start looking at other tools. If you are using AutoCAD to generate your drawings, you need to start looking at, 3D tools. Likewise, for the supply chains, for even the students, I think is a big thing. If you're not getting challenged about this in your university, in your degree or bachelor's degree, you really need to be asking questions. Why? Because from the students coming out of university should be challenging us, I think, in terms of digitization or digital workflows and tools and so on.
Even if it's only because that's, let's say, the only thing they know to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything else can be taught, I expect. But if you're,
well, you have mentioned a lot of softwares by name, and I would also like to say that it is not about the software, specific software. It is about the understanding of how data and how digital works. I think that no matter what software you are using, start using one. They all are very similar in the end. So they are, especially nowadays that we are emphasizing so much on user experience and user interface, they will end up looking more or less the same. You will find the commands and the actions easily. So, but at least get used to them, get used to work in that way, implement that on your daily activities, and then move from there. And it will be much easier to adjust and to shift to different tools whenever they are ready and they will continue to evolve.
And I guess understand what it is you want to do. What's your role? What's the reason for the tool? I hear a lot of quantity surveying practices buying licenses for certain 3D softwares. And I always challenge that, because I don't think as a QS you should be using a 3D software in terms of design software, because there's so many. So if you procure one and you get trained in one, what happens when the next project has a different software and the next project again has a different software? It means you won't, all the time and effort you've put into learning one of the digital design softwares, you will not be able to use in the next.
No.
So you need to understand what it is you need to do as a profession, and then look at what softwares are available.
Yeah, and actually you're not responsible for the production of that information. So it's about transferring or being clear to the ones that are responsible for producing that information for you, of what you need. To do that, you need to know what you need. Yeah. So you need to have been in contact with it. You need to have worked with it, potentially, also have, progressively, preferably. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to get it, to absorb all these new understanding and mindsets in one day.
And if you reflect on some of the projects we're working on at the moment, you might have 3 or 4 different 3D design softwares depending on the discipline. Architects might use one, structural engineers might use another, external landscaping and underground drainage might use one. It really is dependent on their needs and their software. So from our perspective as quantity surveyors, we don't need to learn all those tools or all those softwares. We have our own, and there's many ones supporting on the market at the moment. And I think we have looked at all of them, because it's important for us to digitize, digitalize our workflows and gather that information and standardize, so that we can become better at what we do. Reduce, if we can, the cost so we can increase value. And I think that's something that digitization or digitalization, that's what it offers.
So I think we agree that if you are not digital, you are left behind. Now it's about, as professionals that have been working already for some years on an industry that has not been digitalized, and with digitalization processes, we need to get used to that, because that's coming. Yeah. And I would say that, what is still left to see in construction, we can see now bits and bits, but there is, I think, a lot more of potential to uncover on what comes on the digital transformation of the entire industry and profession.
Someone said to me that a farmer put VR glasses on their cows so the cows could get the outdoor experience. Now, if I went home and told my father that, he would laugh at me. But then again, if you told me a couple of years ago, I would have laughed at you too.
I'm laughing at it now.
So what's going to happen in the future? What happens with this? We absolutely have no idea. But that's the excitement, right?
But that's happening. That's to be seen.
Yeah, it absolutely is happening. I think it offers so much opportunity at the moment, because we can now, for the first time maybe within the industry, plan a future that is currently unknown. If we go back, I don't know, half a century, I guess, construction was the same, the process was the same. It was very localized. Whereas now with the digital tools, we're having online meetings with teams all over the world on projects all over the world. We're decentralizing our locations now because we can, that's all adding value to people's lives. So, it's happening slowly. And I think, if we reflect on COVID a little bit, okay, COVID helped.
We needed the pandemic.
We need a pandemic to push people into this, digital workflow, especially online meetings. The concept of meeting a person face to face for the first time now is kind of crazy. Will we ever fly, to the next country for one meeting? Absolutely not. We'll take it on Teams, of course, or whatever other software is available. But it's a mouthful. But I think we covered everything. And the message to people and individuals, I suppose, is just consider what you're doing and how you could potentially digitize your information in order to be able to use it to create more value in your daily process. I think that's the key. And our theme seems to be value creation. So we're going to continue that, I think, in the next number of podcasts.
Yeah, it definitely brings value to the industry.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Thanks, Elia. Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.